What kind of financial choices would you make if you had only 5 or 10 years left to live? There's a guy sitting out here in my lobby. His name is Marlo. I've never met him before. He's sitting here, I think, with his son, Mike. And at my last event, he filled this out at our VIP session. He said, I medically do not have 10 years left. Do you have a shorter game plan? In other words, Kris, I don't have time to waste. I need something that can happen for me financially in a few years. So I don't know anything about his finances or where he's coming from. But what I do know is that he's desperate for a financial game plan that makes sense for he, his wife, his family. Let's meet them. Hey, Marlo, right?
Yes.
Marlo, I'm Kris Krohn. How are you doing?
Glad to meet you.
And this is your son, you must be Mike? Right. Awesome. Have a seat, guys. How are we doing?
Pretty good.
So, is this your handwriting?
That is.
So, if you have 10 years left to live, what do you have?
I have a condition called PAH, pulmonary arterial hypertension.
Yeah.
It's just where the arteries between the heart and the lung are deformed and don't work very well.
And do you have any idea how long the doctors think you have?
They don't. Generally, most people are dead within 6 years or less, and so I'm probably on borrowed time, and there's no cure for it. So
when you ask this question, what did you have in mind? What are you looking for?
you promoted a 10-year program or 10 or 15 year,
Yeah.
and so my question to you is, do you have something that's shorter, say a 4 to 7 year plan,
Or 6 years?
or 6 years,
Or maybe less?
whatever
Okay.
that could help me in my situation.
All right.
And so that's my interest with you.
Well, the answer is, I don't know, but I'm here to find out. You ready?
I am.
Come with me.
Okay.
Let's go. Mike, come on back with us.
It's one all, one shot, now the future before us. Go!
Marlo, just have a seat right here on this couch. Mike, have a seat here in this chair. And here's what we're gonna do. Let's lay a little bit of groundwork because my team filled me in on just a little bit of basic information. And if you have 6 years, not even 10 years left to live, here's the question. How do you build a solid financial game plan for you, for your family, for your loved ones that are being left behind? And what kind of legacy can you leave generationally based on what you've done in your life? That's really what we're gonna be exploring today. So I got a big task ahead of me. I gotta learn about Marlo, his situation. I gotta learn where he's financially at. But before I do a game plan, Marlo, what I wanna do for you is I wanna help you and Marlo and his son, Mike, understand the financial considerations based on this. 5 principles of a solid financial game plan. There's some education we gotta get out of the way real quick because I'm about to figure out, Marlo, your finances, where you're at, and then I'm gonna tear them apart and rebuild them, see if we can create positive arbitrage. So I gotta learn, your goals and all these different things. Let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing we have to figure out is what your financial goal is. And determining that goal is different for most people because most people think, oh, do I need to accumulate millions of dollars in my life so that I can have the retirement I want? Well, most of us will be in the accumulation model of save, 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 save. Then we give our money to a financial planner, and then we find out the financial planner says, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna annuitize your money, basically give you 3% interest you can live off of, and you might be wondering what that means. Well, before you can leave a legacy of wealth for posterity, you first need to set a financial goal. For example, $3.3 million will annuitize and basically produce at 3% about $100,000 a year. And the question is, does this cover your family's needs, or are you gonna need more, or are you okay with less? In other words, it doesn't matter so much how many millions you have or hundreds of thousands. It's a bigger question of, well, wherever you put that money, it's gonna produce an interest rate. And will the interest off of your savings be enough to help you live that lifestyle? So in other words, the real goal is, how much money do you need a month to live the life that you want when you're retired? You might say, well, I think I can live that lifestyle at $5,000 a month. You might say $50,000 a month. Whatever your number is, you need to know it because that's what's gonna help determine whether you can get there or not. The second principle that you need to understand is that you can't put all your eggs in one basket, which is why financially most people accept that you're gonna have to balance out your portfolio. Where should you put that money? Now, society will say that portfolio balancing is like putting money in like a 401k or an IRA, which is a version of the stock market. We're gonna take, kind of a combination of some of the most successful blue chip companies that have already had their rise, they've stabilized, and as they grow, we get to win on some of that growth. If we go into a recession like we just headed into, then I might see my portfolio balance drop a little bit. Once you've determined your goals, decide what the optimal diversified portfolio looks like for you. Decide your level of risk and determine what percentage of your wealth should be stored in assets like real estate, business, stocks, crypto, things like this. Now, I want to cue in on this word risk because a lot of people think that the safest thing to do is become a Dave Ramseyite, like pay off your house, put as much as you can in a 401k and IRA, and then we're gonna call it good. The problem is that if you've got a great job and if you're really good at saving money, a lifetime of doing that only usually allows most people not to save $3.3 million. Sometimes they can't even save $1 million. The average person in their 60s has saved $200,000. But remember, most of them in their mid-50s will hit their peak earnings of just shy of $100,000 a year, about $95,000. Parkinson's law states that we spend plus or minus 10% of the money that we make, which means that most people only save enough for retirement to cover maybe 2 or 3 years of living. And so, sure, you should have a balanced portfolio, but if you assess risk where you want the least amount of risk, which in turn gives you the lowest ROI, then as that money compounds over 40 years, it doesn't grow into a whole lot. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's just say for a moment that you had $50,000 and let's just say that you had it in a typical stock portfolio. Well, 401ks for the most part on the 30-year average produce about 5 or 6% growth. If you're producing 6% of growth on 50K, then what happens after 20 years? Essentially it triples. That 50,000 turns into $160,000. Most people would say, Kris, we made the right call because that was very, very low risk. The real question is, did you honor the time that you had when your money needed to be working for you? For example, in my world, if I take $50,000 and I put it in something like real estate, as was mentioned, and let's say I'm earning an average of 25%. Well, at 20 years from now, my money, my 50K hasn't tripled into 160,000. It's now turned into $4.3 million. 27 times more money because I got a 4 times higher ROI on my money. Most people think that a higher ROI means higher risk. But I'm here to tell you that that's not always true, but I'll tell you what is. Sometimes the lowest ROI is what risks our financial future the most. The third principle that I want you to understand before I do Marlo's game plan is this. There are 3 different modes of finances through life. There's a time to save, there's a time to invest, and there's a time to spend. This, unfortunately, is not the model we're taught in life. Just last night, Sunday night, I spent an hour with my daughter. She's 16 years old, and I'm teaching a 16-year-old what I think everyone in this country, in fact, around the world, should learn about money. There's a time to save. When you've saved something, you need to learn how to invest it responsibly with a blend of different balanced portfolio pieces, but that produce a higher ROI so that once you have time on your side for 30, 40, 50 years, you can now take all of those earnings and you can learn how to responsibly spend them down and enjoy your life to the fullest. That is not what today's conversation is about. It's a sensitive conversation. It's about a beautiful man and his son, his wife, and trying to figure out, if I only have 6 years, if I have less than 10 years, if I have less than that, what do I do with the money that I have so that I can figure out how to live life responsibly now, retired? It also means that I want to create some memories while I'm here, and I also want to make sure when I'm gone that I can continue taking care of my loved ones. We're going to see if we can get there. The fourth principle that I want to talk about is investing, that second step from the previous slide. And there are 2 types of major things that you want to be aware of when it comes to investing. Either you're going to invest in things that have time to grow, not 6 years, not 5 years, not 3 years, but it's like, hey, I've got 10, 20, 30 years. How can I make my money perform for me over time? The second thing you should be looking for is cash flow investments. What are the kind of things that I can buy for, let's call it a lot of money, that can spin off a little bit of money so that it can enhance my lifestyle now? Most people only have a single stream of income. I have a job, I work that job, I get a paycheck, and then I have to figure out how to balance my finances on that single job. But what if my money was sitting in real estate? When I bought my first property, I was surprised to find that it had $600 extra a month for me. My second property did too. My third property had an extra 500. Another property had 300, another property had 700, another property had 400. My wife and I, we started creating, ultimately, in the first 4 years, 25 streams of income, meaning 25 properties. They produced $12,000 a month. Well, even though we had debt, we were millions of dollars in debt, but we were controlling that debt, and it left over, after all expenses in that business, $12,000 left over a month. It meant that I could quit my job. I could reclaim my 40 hours of time at my job, and I could start putting it into things that were more joyful and also bigger business enterprises. So growth and cash flow each have their place. In my conversation with Marlo today, we're not going to be focusing so much on growth. We're going to be focusing on more on what's your cash flow currently look like and what would you like to get it to. The last thing that I need you to have awareness on is that we all have 24 hours in a day. But why is it that some people use their time one way and make it way more valuable than other people? Well, here's one of the secrets. The fifth secret for today, before we go into Marlo's game plan and your game plan, is that you have to evaluate the fact that there are different sources of income. In other words, when I spend my time, I can produce an active income. This comes from a job. But there are things like real estate or owning businesses that you don't have to run that produce a passive return. What passive means is I put my money in, and I don't have to put time in, but it continues making money for me. So for example, I love franchises that I can be an absentee owner on because I have a CEO or someone that is running it. I can own real estate or commercial deals that don't require any of my time, but they continue to produce for me. In fact, there's tons of investments out there that are passive. And so knowing how to tap into responsible passive investments often determines the difference on whether you feel overburdened, overwhelmed, overcommitted, not enough time, too busy, or whether you actually have all sorts of leftover time because your money's working for you instead of you working for it. Now, with that being said, Marlo, hopefully some of that information was useful.
Yes, it was.
It's foundational for what we're going to be talking about because I'm about to dive in and learn about your personal finances. And the first thing I talked about in today's video is that you need to have a goal. And so I'm curious right now. I think that a goal should be framed up not as how big of a pile of money you want, but rather how much money do you want every month to be able to live off of? Right now, you've been retired for how long?
5 months.
And you retired from what? What was your industry?
Manufacturing engineering in the aerospace industry.
Okay, so you built like rockets or airplanes or like...
Planes, missiles, defense contracts.
Did you like your job?
I actually loved it.
Wow, and so you got to do that for how many years?
A little over 40.
Okay, 40 years. By the way, how are you transitioning without working the last 5 months?
Totally loved it.
Okay.
But I've also realized in 5 months that I don't have the money to continue the lifestyle.
Got it. So my guess is you got Social Security that's kicked in. Is this right?
I do, both my wife and I.
Okay, and on average, how much is that combined every month?
Just a little under 2,000.
Okay, so you have 2,000.
Or no, 2,000 for me.
Okay.
And 800 for my wife.
So you have about 2,800 a month. Is that enough for you guys to live your current lifestyle?
No, it's not.
Okay, how much would you, what's your goal? What are you trying to get to every month? If we could rearrange assets, what do you need?
If we could get that up to 6,000, that would allow me to have a comfortable lifestyle, but not an extravagant lifestyle.
Okay.
If it went above that, hey, great.
And what would that mean for your wife after your passing to have 6,000 a month versus 2,800?
It would leave her in a position to where she wouldn't have to worry about the bills, where money was coming from. We'd be able to leave some to our estate, and she would be comfortable with that.
Got it. So check it out. This is a very real life and death conversation. Like, life is on the line, right? You're for your family. It's about enjoying the time that you have left. And it's about making sure that your family's taken care of after. So I understand how heavy of a conversation this is. I'm younger, I'm not your age, but as I just even attempt a little bit to empathize, put myself in your shoes, I feel that burden and that weight of, okay, let's see if we can get to 6,000. And I want to see if we can do it. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Come on with me. Just come on over here. We're gonna come up to the table. I'm gonna put you right over here on this side. And let's have this conversation. I need to know what I'm working with. So I'm going to ask you to share, big picture, just what you have to work with. When you were in aerospace engineering and you were putting money away, Did you build a 401k?
I did.
And roughly how much do you have in that 401k?
I have about $150,000.
$150,000 in that 401k. And we just entered a recession, which means a lot of people's 401ks have been hit. Is that the value of it today?
No, it's about 80 or 85 right now because.
Okay, we're gonna call it $80,000. Okay, so you've been contributing to your 401k your entire life, but that's almost just been cut in half.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
And unfortunately, I did use part of that in the past for a business of my own. I have owned my own business a couple times.
Okay.
And so that obviously is smaller than it should be, but
We're not
that's
going
what
to
it
get.
is.
We're not going to get into the shoulding. Guess how big my 401k is.
I wouldn't even dare guess.
I don't have a 401k.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So different strokes. I'm going to share with you a little bit of a different philosophy. So I wouldn't feel bad about it. Your wife have a 401k?
She does.
And roughly what is there?
About the same, 150.
Okay, about 150. So altogether between the 80 and the 150, there's roughly $230,000. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you have any other retirements in the form of IRAs, any other type of stock portfolios, annuities, or anything like that?
Just some savings,
Okay. How much in savings?
15,000.
Okay, we're going to leave that, right? That's probably a little bit of your buffer sleep well at night account?
Yes.
We're going to leave that untouched. You have a house or are you renting?
I own my own house.
Okay, so let me understand on your house, what would you guess that your house is worth today?
About 850,000.
Okay, $850,000. And what do you owe on it?
I just paid it off a few months ago.
Ooh, how did that feel?
It was great.
You've had this house for how many years?
30.
Wait, so did you do a 30-year mortgage?
I did, but I refinanced it a couple of times, and
Okay.
so I've had to make balloon payments in
Okay.
order to do it.
But
So,
basically, you just got this paid off.
I did.
So on the one hand, that feels like a big accomplishment, deserves a high five.
Yes.
And it'll feel good for only a moment because I've got some suggestions that are not designed to make you cry, but I've got some feelings on what I'm learning about your finances. And for the most part right now, you've got money sitting in the market, $230,000. You've got money in the house, $850,000 in value. Right now, that means that you probably have a net worth somewhere around $1.1 million.
Sounds about right.
And I got to tell you right now that there are very few Marlos in the world. He's worked hard. You've been a great saver your entire life, I'm assuming.
I've been really frugal.
Yeah, and I'm just telling you right now that having over $1 million in net worth at your age, at retirement, that's commendable. The average person your age right now has about $200,000, and that's it. So you've done significantly better. So you should feel good about
So
that.
that makes me feel a little better.
Good, but the question is, how do we rearrange this to go from $2,800 a month to $6,000 a month? And I can't promise that you're gonna like anything that I have to share, but I can promise you that I will show you ways that you could achieve it. Fair?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. We've got a goal, and that goal is to add an extra $3,200 a month, because right now you're at $2,800. You're $2,800 from Social Security. If we could augment and add another $3,200, that would get you to $6,000.
Okay.
Deal?
Yep.
All right, now, I'm going to share with you, first of all, my feelings on some of your types of investments. You're part of a generation, most of us are, where we've been told that if your house can be paid off, that's an accomplishment, that's something you should celebrate and feel really good about. But for me, I look at this and I say, this is premature paid off. And the reason why it's prematurely paid off is because what you have right now is financial security. It's a level of freedom. But there's a higher level of freedom, and that comes from having an income of $6,000 a month. You've elected for no debt instead of $6,000 a month. And I'm asking you right now, if you could only make one choice, which would you choose? Kris, I want to keep everything that I have and live off of $2,800 a month, or I'm willing to rearrange my finances, even go back into debt potentially, if it could get me to a very predictable $6,000 a month. Which is more important? The feeling of paid off or $6,000 a month?
I think the reality would be the $6,000 a month.
The reality is the $6,000, but that's a tough question because that's 40 years of ingrained indoctrination that says paid off, 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 and that's going to feel good. And what we do is we make financial decisions so that we can have a feeling of peace. But the reality is there's not a lot of peace because even though it's paid off, you're missing the income that you need to live life the way you want. And now that you have a concept of how much life you have left, you can quantify it. And you know that $6,000 is not extravagant, but if you had $6,000 a month, what are some of the extra options that you would have in life?
I'd be able to travel,
Okay.
Go do some of the things that my wife and I have discussed over the years that
Like,
we'd
what's
like
one
to
of the
do.
things that you've always wanted to do?
Well, I would like to go on a service mission for
Okay.
our church.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I love that. That costs money, right?
Yeah.
How much does that, curious, how much does that cost?
That'd probably be $800 a month.
Okay, so part of that $6,000 a month could at least provide the option where you could do that service mission for your church. Got it. Awesome. So some travel, there's some service. So check it out. How do we get to $3,200 a month? I'm going to show you different ways of getting there. I want to prepare you though that my way sometimes slaughters the sacred cow. The paid off home has been a goal your entire life. Also, you have money in the 401k, and it doesn't feel good that the market has literally lost nearly half your 401k. Statistically speaking, if you had all the time in the world, just wait 36 months and statistically every dollar is going to come back. But the idea of losing 3 years just to get even, how does that feel?
It keeps me up at night.
Keeps you up at night. Doesn't feel good.
No.
Okay. Well, we're going to play with a number of different options right now that I can show you. And it's very important for you to understand that all we're doing is exploring different ways that we can get there. And we're going to see what's possible. Deal?
Okay.
All right. We're going to play an extreme game of black and white. And we're going to start by saying, okay, we're only going to buy real estate. And we're only going to buy paid off real estate. What could that do? So you love your house because you've been living in it for 30 years. It has lots of treasured memories.
And we've remodeled it how we want it.
Yeah,
it's comfortable.
It's comfortable. It's what you want it to be. So we're just going to go total extreme today, and we're going to liquidate your 401k. We're going to sell your house. And what you're going to get is a pile of money. I'm not saying that you should do this. Take a breath.
Okay.
Take a breath. It's okay. But I'm just saying if I had $1.1 million, obviously you need a place to live, and I'm just going to start playing this game. If I took $1.1 million and I put it into paid off free and clear real estate, I could maneuver that into 4 paid off homes. I'm really good at earning about 10% on that money on paid off real estate. So 10% of $1.1 million is, I'll even round down, but that's basically a little over $100,000 a year. So I get $110,000, and if we break that down on the monthly, that's a little over $8,000 a month. So your $2,800 plus $8,000 would put you over $10,000 a month. Way past the $6,000.
Okay.
Did you know that?
I'm following the numbers.
Cool. I'm not saying we do that. Let's just go ahead and visit another possibility, should we?
Okay.
All right. Another possibility says, no, Kris, I love the house. I want to keep the house. You could get a home equity line of credit on the house, but because you're fixed income, it's going to be limited. Because a normal home equity line of credit would allow you to borrow probably up to over $600,000. But on your fixed income, do you have a home equity line?
I just barely purchased one, or
Okay.
just went and got one, the approval.
And how much is it for?
$250,000.
Okay, so we got only $250,000 to work with. If you borrow $250,000, that's going to come at a cost. Let's just say that cost is right around $1,500 a month. Based on rates, it's not a very unfair amount. So you're like, wait a second, Kris, this is moving backwards. You're asking me to go back into debt on my house that I've just taken 40 years to pay off, and it's going to cost me $1,500 a month. I'm like, yep, you better do something really smart with that $250,000 that could make that worthwhile. Would you agree?
And also, I haven't told you this, that
Okay.
I've had a couple of rental properties, and I sold those and used some of the money to pay off my house.
I got it.
I was in a positive cash flow,
Yep.
but I hated being a landlord.
Yes, well, I don't believe in being a landlord, so I understand why you got out, but you became a don't wanter because you got motivated not to play that game anymore.
Okay.
And you said, if I have only this much time left, I'm done fixing toilets. True or false?
That's true.
Okay, fair. Okay, so let's dive into what you would do with the $250,000 because there's different options. One of the options is you could pick up a franchise. And let's just say that you pick it up for $100,000. And let's just assume for this example, because I have several examples that exist in the real world like this, that if you put in $100,000, that it's going to pay you $100,000 a year after all expenses. If you did that, remember the $100,000 a year is bringing in $8,000 a month You counteract the $1,500 a month, and what you're netting is $6,500 a month. $6,500 plus your current $2,800 is exceeding your goal and getting you closer to $8,000 or $9,000. But we only used $100,000 of it. So a second option is, well, Kris, what about the other $150,000? I have a slew of investments I play with where I play a game of positive arbitrage. And what I mean by that is I work with car dealerships. And what they need is money to go out to the auctions and buy cars. And then they're going to sell them. And in this market, they're doing really well. They're making a lot of money. So I can get these car lots to pay me 15 to 20% on my money every single year. And by the way, I also do the same arbitrage in real estate. There's several different ways. Well, $150,000 that is earning you 15%, we could pull out the calculator right here on my phone. And if I take $150,000 and I'm earning 15% on it, that's $22,500 a year. But remember, I've got to cover I've got to make sure that I cover that payment. I may have already done it through the franchise, but that 15% now says, oh, here's another $22,000 a year. We're going to divide that by 12, and that's going to show us that it's bringing in $1,875 a month. In other words, this $150,000 earning a fixed 15%, that's enough to cover your entire payment, have left over, and still leave $100,000 left over for a different project. That would be another way of cutting this up. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. Let's look at a third option. All right, let's talk about this 401k for a little bit. My guess is that the house that you live in, the house that you've remodeled, and the house you paid off is probably more special to you than your 401ks. True or false?
That's true.
That's true.
Way more.
Because your 401ks, are they even giving you anything on a monthly basis? Do they write you a check? Do they fuel your lifestyle?
No, I'm not even pulling from it right now.
No, you're not even pulling from it, right? So we look at that and there's $230,000. If you were to take that out, are you at an age where you no longer have a penalty?
Yes.
So now all you have to do is pay taxes on it. So, this year we brought in $230,000 and your taxes on that, let's just say that puts you into a 20% tax bracket after all other write-offs and considerations, times 0.8. It's going to leave you with roughly $180,000. Now, it could be a little bigger, it could be a little smaller depending on your tax situation, but the point is you have $180,000. You could take that and you could put that into 3 leveraged pieces of property. And instead of being a landlord, you could actually give your son Mike an opportunity to play a little bit of a lease option system where these properties manage themselves. And on average, I take home $500 a month of positive cash flow, which is an extra $1,500. Well, $1,500 is half nearly of that $3,200 goal that we have. And that's just from using the 401ks alone. Or the $180,000 could be earning 20% in one of my turning real estate funds. I'll explain it. Sometimes the way that I get a really good deal on the market is I have to buy it cash. And so I get an extra discount. So I have a fund for some of my partners that actually put the money in, and then I pay them 20% a year for actually providing that service. So you say 180,000, and we're going to times that by 20%. That could produce, for example, $36,000 a year. Let's divide that by 12, and there is $3,000 a month on top of your $2,800 a month. That gets you nearly to that $6,000 goal. In other words, if we're just looking for cash flow, we've asked, can we get to the goal through paid off real estate? Can we? Based on this?
If we use the real estate.
If you sold your home, which is a huge ask, you could trade that for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month.
Yes.
And then you'd get your goal because you put that $8,000 on top of your $2,800 and boom, we're at $10,000 a month. It's not 6, it's 10, but there's a sacrifice.
But what about my cost of living, because now I've sold my house, so now I've got to spend that money, some of that money, and go live somewhere else.
So if you've got $10,000 a month and your goal was $6,000, now you can spend $4,000 a month. My guess is $4,000 a month will probably put you in a house nicer than what you're in right now.
Yes.
Yep. Or keep the house, use some of the equity, and we've talked about franchises, we've talked about some different plays, we've even talked about the 401k. These are separate options. The point is that there's a lot of options, and obviously you don't have to pick today because they're worth researching. All I wanted to know is if it was even possible to get you to $6,000 a month, and guess what?
Well,
based on what you see, is it possible?
Yeah, we got 3 different options.
Yeah, and do you think there are probably more than that?
I'm sure there is.
There are way more options, and I will take the time to make sure you understand them. But for you, I want you to be aware that when J.B. Shea, French economist in the 1800s, gave the definition of wealth, what he said was, you're moving money from low yields to high yields. You've been accustomed to paying off your house so that you could avoid paying 3 or 4 or 5% interest. You put money in a 401k so that you could earn 5 or 6% each year on your money. But there's a whole world out there where sometimes the safest thing is not to think that risk is equated with high ROI, but sometimes the safest thing to do is to get your money split up into several different higher ROI vehicles. Some may not always work out, but the likelihood of success is significantly higher than guaranteed failure from putting your money in such safe places that it can never actually make your goals or dreams come true. Man, this stuff is fun for me, but it's also a little complicated. Years ago, I learned how to perform these very technical game plans because I have an awareness of all of these different options and things that you can do. It doesn't mean that there's no risk, but I think from what we've learned today, Marlo has plenty of options of how he can create the security for his wife and his family in the future, while also kind of relaxing a little bit on making sure he can do some of the travel. He's worked hard his entire life. I think it's time for him to collect some beautiful, amazing memories with the time that he has. If you're interested in getting your own custom game plan, then there is a link below this video, and I have trained 40 people on this planet. I spend time with them every Monday, and they understand all of this. And I basically say, hey, if you fill out this link and want a custom game plan, you can talk to a certified member of my team, and they'll put me in your shoes and share with you the things that I would consider doing, not the things that you should do. And if anything resonates, if anything makes sense, I got news for you. Chances are you're living below your privilege. Chances are there's more opportunities. Chances are there's a lot bigger upside, but not necessarily with greater risk. Click the link below, find out for yourself. Marlo, you've got to have some questions, right? I mean, that was just a few minutes to basically tear 40 years of beautifulness all apart and then have a chance to say, how could it be rebuilt to create positive arbitrage and put you in a stronger financial situation? What do you think about what we talked about today?
I see that there's a lot of options there, but to be honest with you, it makes me ill and sick inside thinking that possibly everything that I've saved for isn't going to work, but yet there's options, and so I'm still hesitant to go down any of these roads, but I realize that I need to.
But today was really about you just understanding there are options, and there's multiple, and there's things worth really considering. I feel a lot of gratitude for Marlo that he was willing to come in and frankly have such a critical conversation. A conversation that's probably not easy to have. I'm just happy and relieved knowing, hey, there are some options. Whatever path he goes down though, the reality is it's going to be tricky to navigate because there are new thoughts, there's new ideas, there's homework to do, there's research to make sure that he makes good choices, that he makes inspired choices, that he figures out how to honor the rest of his life and also his family's life. We are in a recession, and I get excited about a good recession. It's something you shouldn't waste. And if you're curious what I'm buying during a recession, click this video, watch right here, let me show you.